Today we're going to be looking at two more selectors in CSS, and those are going to be IDs and classes. One may not seem necessary and may not seem useful right now, but you will see why it's very important to specify each one correctly. So we'll start off with the ID. So an ID is used, and how you define an ID, you go to the HTML document and find the specific element that you want to style. So in this case, we'll look at this div. And to define an ID, or the name of the element, we could specify the attribute called ID and give it a value. And then within this value, you could provide anything that you want to name this element. So there's some syntax issues when defining an ID. Just make sure when you start defining an ID, you start it with a letter, whether it be capitalized or not. After you have done that, you can include numbers, hyphens, underscores, colons, and periods. The ones I usually use are numbers or hyphens, really. So let's define this ID. So we'll call it box, and we'll use the hyphen 01 or something. That's just an example. Usually I just name it box, but for demonstration purposes, I called it box-01. So we have this ID now defined, and now we could actually use that to select this element and style it in our index.css file, which I linked right here. So let's go to that file and edit this div. So I guess before I style this document, I should show you the page itself without the styling. So this is how it looks. So there's that. So let's choose that element by selecting it by its ID. So to select it by its ID, what you have to use is the hash symbol or the pound symbol, and then it's followed by the actual name or the value for the attribute ID. So we defined it as box-01, and now we proceed with the typical CSS. So now we could, I guess we could give this a background color of, I don't know, red, and then give the color of the text maybe white or something. So there we go. Now I guess I could show you how the page will look with this ID. So we refresh the page. Now the only element that's being edited or styled in this document is the element that has the attribute or the ID attribute of box-01, which is this first div on this HTML document. And as you can see, we're only styling that element. So basically, you could repeat the process. So you could define this other div. So this is ID box02 or something, 02. And now we could use that to style. So I'm going to just copy this, paste it, and then make this a 2. And then maybe make this green. And then the color should be, I don't know, gray. And there you go. Now let's refresh the page and see what we get. So as you can see, that's what you get when you choose the other element. So now we could now go into the idea of classes. So the idea of classes is that if you have multiple elements with the same styling, what you want to use is a class. The reason why you don't use IDs to duplicate stylings is because there's issues with JavaScript. So if you're going to use JavaScript on your page, there'll be selector issues, and when you code up JavaScript by selecting specific elements on the page and you defined it by IDs with the same attribute, you may not get the same or the desired result that you want. So basically, it's best to use classes when you have elements that have the same styling across the web page. So this is what I'm talking about. That's bad practice. So if I want to select the element in jQuery and I'm really talking about this element and not this element, and I start coding expecting that this element is being changed and not this one, we'll get undesired results. So that's why it's best to use classes when you have to. So to define a class is actually the same way as the other attribute ID. So what you do is type the word class, the attribute class, and give it a value. And the same syntax occurs. So we'll start off with I don't know, we call this boxes now, and then we'll give this class or give this div a class as well, and that'll be boxes 2. So now we could actually choose both of the elements and save some CSS code or excess CSS code by choosing a class and styling both elements at once. So Now to choose a class, all you have to do is put the period and then the name of the class. So we called it boxes, or called them boxes. And now we could change whatever styling that we want. I guess the typical thing that I've been doing is changing the background color. So we'll change them both to blue and give the color of the text white. And now that we have that, let me show you the element. So this is how it looks. Now we're going to refresh the page. Now both elements on the screen with the class value of boxes has changed the background color to blue. So that's basically it. Use classes when you have multiple stylings that are repeated across multiple elements, and use IDs when you're only specifying one element on the page for styling, and this will save you some issues if you're using JavaScript later.